I'm here with
Hello.
Pepper the Sickie, who's probably going to bow out here in just a little bit because of that.
Yeah.
So, um,
Uh,
luckily not COVID, but still unpleasant. But we are
yeah.
discussing the Instagram thing, and so the reason why we don't have opening credits is because we were in the middle of the discussion when the lights changed in my room, and I was like, "Oh, we should start," but we're in the middle of a discussion. It's really cool,
Yeah.
so we'll just keep going. So
So, yeah.
you were saying that they have figured out a way to get Meta, which is the company that controls Facebook and Instagram, to send an actual official link
Yeah.
surrendering control.
Basically, allowing someone to be logged in at a different location that's not you. You have to click this link. Um, I click this link thinking I'm half asleep. And I'm
Right.
like thinking, oh, okay, like this person is telling me that they want me to see something. Okay. So I click this link. They go in. Um, they went in, they changed my password first, they changed everything first, and basically my account was hacked that way. And through official channels, nonetheless.
Right.
So, um, yeah, I'm
So we
not.
were we were talking about Bill had said yesterday that there needs to be a way for you to set up in your account legitimate verifiers
Right. And
so
like
that
today,
if you've
yeah.
got 12 people who are your legitimate verifiers, which I know Facebook does.
Hmm.
And the reason that I know that is because I have forgotten my mother's password to my mother's Facebook account, which I set up because she had passed away long before that. And I was going to go on ahead back back in the early days of Facebook. Back in the days of the dinosaurs. They wouldn't allow you to make Facebook accounts for dead people.
Right.
But people were on Facebook looking for my mom and they kept searching me out. And so I made a fake Facebook account for my mom so that people would find her account and see that she had passed away.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of people my mom knew, and mom would get into arguments with people and yada, yada, yada. And then they would stop talking for 10 years. And then
Right.
they would decide to make up. And that was the way it went. That was just the
Yeah.
nature of my mom. And I knew that there was waves of people out there who had been in various arguments with my so I was like, these poor people are coming to me and I'm having to break the news to them. And this
Yeah.
is getting really unpleasant because I don't know these people and they're getting all teary and sad. And I'm like, "Rrr." So I made this account and I've recently decided that, hello, Brent.
Hey,
Now that
Brent.
my father has passed away, my sister and I are going, he gave us the passwords to his account and everything like that. We've got complete control over his Facebook. That's not a problem. But we should turn my mom's and my dad's account both into memorial accounts now that they actually do that. Facebook actually legitimately allows you to make a memorial account.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to wrangle my mom's account and I couldn't remember the password. And I was like, oh crap, what password did I use? And of course, it was locking me out for an hour every time I'd forget. So finally, I was like, let's go for the recover password thing. And they said, okay, let's verify that it's you. I want you to get these three people to send a code, three of mom's friends to send a code
Yeah.
verifying that you are in control of this account. Because with her, we didn't set up survivorship. So
Yeah.
this is survivorship mode. Well, of course, I don't know these three. I know two of these people, but I don't know three of these people. So the three people it chose randomly to send a code. Um, you know, I was like, "Ugh, crap." So they do have a function of some sort like this. All they'd have to do is say, you know, Pepper, get these three people, random three people that are your friends, to send this code to verify that you are, in fact, you. Because
Yeah.
if you can call them up and say, "Hey, guy, send code 1234 to Facebook," that makes
Yeah.
sense. So they have the process, they just don't have it for us yet.
Well,
And
and what the big problem is the fact of this happened. and I still kick myself for everything that happened. That it is like something like that is my fault. Um, but like if you get messages from me from this from my account that you thought it was following for art, and it's about something else, clearly it's not me at this point. So
I mean, any
uh,
normal human can figure out that you haven't suddenly turned to Bitcoin from
right, I
art.
mean,
You were an artist a
it's
few
just,
minutes ago. You're now suddenly looking for Bitcoin. It's
I
clearly
mean,
not you.
most people that I know, and I know well, they all know that I don't want digital currency and I'm against NFTs. I'm against Bitcoin. Like, I may have a husband in the tech field, but I and myself do
Well,
not participate in
well, and
digital currency.
even if you were a digital artist that got into that, it would be NFTs. It wouldn't be Bitcoins, and any techie would know that.
Yeah,
Like,
but like Bitcoin,
even I mean, like
Bitcoin and NFTs storage is very similar. So
it
like,
is, but I'm just saying that
yeah,
you wouldn't be out there with Bitcoin hacking. You'd be
yeah,
or hawking. You'd be hawking NFTs.
yeah,
That's the
but
point I'm trying to get at
yeah,
is that it's
I
clear, even
and
if you were,
I don't want either one of those in my life.
yeah,
you know,
even if you were, it'd be clear that
even
that
if
was.
even if Bill protests.
I I have been thinking about experimenting with NFTs and seeing what the story is because I don't know. I don't know enough. I there are groups of people that are saying it's bad for the environment. I understand that argument, although I had to have my buddy Shane explain it to me. It was very sad, but I'm curious. You know, I may think it's stupid if I explore it, but I feel like if I just dismiss it outright, I'm going to someday go, it would be like cell phones. Because at first, when cell phones came out, I dismissed them outright. I was like, man, I don't need a cell phone. I have a phone right here.
Right.
And it's like, and there have been things where I've dismissed them outright and turned out to be correct about it. I haven't particularly cared about diesel engines, but you know, I'm not a real diesel fan. Turns out that it doesn't have the speed or power that I want out of it. It's got a lot of torque, but so
Well,
dismissing diesels outright turned out to be okay in my book, even though,
yeah, I mean, I can agree with you. Um,
and
you
I
know,
will quantify that by saying diesels are not right for me, not
no,
that diesels are bad.
but also at the same time, like when people find out that I have a degree in business that focuses in environmental and social stuff,
Right?
it's just weird for people to think that I would do an NFT
Right?
or even have Bitcoin, because like Bitcoin and NFTs, they both work off the same system.
But people
They're
are
two
working
different
on
types, I understand.
well, no, I know, but people are working on trying to lower the environmental impact.
Right.
Does that change your concept?
Um, digital currency in the long run is probably something where the human race is going to go. I
Yeah.
understand that. Okay. My problem with it is it's still at a phase where it's hackable, and it's been proven that it's been hackable. When people try to cash out on a glitch in the system not that long ago, and people were waking up to their Bitcoin accounts where they had like $3 million or something, and they try to cash out into real money. Didn't happen. It wasn't able to be backed. People's balances went back to normal, and it was a glitch. Someone went in and did it,
Sure.
and that in
But
itself
but that
means
that
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 that is
also can happen. That has happened a number of times with, First Bank.
First Bank. Yes, that's a banking system.
Right.
Someone breaking into a banking system, that's fine. But you're talking digital
Not fine, but
currency
yeah.
that's still kind of new, and you're talking about a type of currency that can rise and fall really quickly out of favor if they have too many hacking issues.
It's fair.
And as much as I would like to say that the banks do get these problems from time to time, they have a better handle on their digital aspects than Bitcoin does at this moment.
They're also FDIC protected.
Right. Which also means that Bitcoin, you have to make a virtual wallet. And I honestly, when the one of the places that I work for like asked me to, like, if I wanted, like, I could have the option of going into the NFTs, and I basically turned it down because they were just using it for gas, um,
Right.
gas money, and I'm like, well, technically, gas money is money. I don't pull over to any gas stations that take Bitcoin.
Well, I think gas is a term.
I think so too.
I mean, as in like gas is what Bitcoins and NFTs ultimately create gas.
Yeah.
That's the underpinning code.
Right.
So it's not gas money like physically putting it in your car.
Well, that's what it was being described as, like,
Yeah.
for stuff to go into my car, and I'm like, Bitcoin doesn't work like this.
Well, that's what I mean. Is I think
Yeah.
maybe there.
Maybe it wasn't communicated properly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I think they may have been miscommunicating with you because gas is a term inside the Bitcoin universe to define a underpinning code thingy widget that I don't
Yeah.
understand. So if you have 22 NFTs, you have 462 gas or something like that, which that 462
Right.
gas equals 29 Bitcoin. Or, you know what I mean? Like there's something underpinning in there with the word gas. So I don't think it literally means gasoline in your vehicle. I think
Right.
I think they were referring to something
it's
else.
it's just one of those things of, the more everyone tries to push me towards it, the
The
less I
more
really want
the less you're
to do
interested.
it. The other thing is there's already multiple articles about on how artists have literally been scamming people with NFTs,
Uh-huh.
calling one of a kind things, and like literally, you'll look up at their NFT posting, like, for like selling. It's the same image, just with different types of coloring or different types of like attributes, but it's the same image.
Right.
And everyone's like, but they're exclusive. I'm like, no, this is not an exclusive thing. How can something be digital and exclusive when I can sit there, you can show it to me, and all I have to do is click a little button that takes a picture of your screen, send it to me, and now I have it.
So somebody had explained to me
Well, no, I
the
mean,
value
this is.
wasn't in the art per se.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I mean, because like technically speaking, somebody had already said, technically speaking, that was true. You wouldn't screenshot a car. Technically, that was also true though
Yeah,
of
that is
print,
true.
right? Like I make because my dad used to sell art. Like he used to have a frame gallery and do art.
Yeah.
And so he would have prints, and the prints were there would be 20 copies of this picture. And the only difference between copy 1 and copy 2 was that the artist wrote 1 of 20 and 2
Yep.
of 20.
Yep.
And that's the only difference between the two. They were identical any other way. And everybody wanted to pay billions of dollars for 1 of 20. And it was much less valuable for 2 of 20.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it feels like to me, when somebody put it that way, I'm like, well, I guess NFTs are no different than art has always been, which is
Yeah.
sometimes stupidly ridiculous and makes no sense. You and I work our asses off all
Yeah.
the time, and our artwork is valueless. Nobody cares. But
No,
if we were
actually,
to,
for me, some of my artwork has been
well, I know.
selling.
I'm just saying. I'm. What I'm trying to get at here is the amount of work. The amount of work that we put into it seems to have no value.
Right.
It has everything to do with whether the art piece has been seen somewhere or is famous, and whether you have signed it one of 20. Right? So I actually, that was my feeling on this, and where I rationalized in my head how NFTs are going is it looks like finally, like in and of itself, an artist might be able to get a leg up by kind of cashing in on the people who usually kind of, well, I appreciate that you value I appreciate that you
Thank
value
you,
our art, Brent.
thank you
It's
for
really,
valuing it.
yeah.
That's great.
I guess
But
like as a secondary argument, I've got a buddy who is a fine artist,
yeah,
and she does, I mean, her work is gorgeous. So I'm not I'm not devaluing her work,
right.
but she'll spend, I don't know, 2 or 3 days on a painting and then sell it for $50,000. So 2 or 3 days effectively is my year's worth of income for
Hmm.
her. 2 or 3 days worth of work for her would pay for my income for a year, right?
Hmm.
If she works for, let's say, a week nonstop, she could make enough money. She makes enough money to put herself into six figures like that,
Yeah.
right? So she does that. And it is true. Her work is gorgeous. It's very, very good. It's
Hmm.
obviously skilled. She
Yeah.
obviously has mad skills. She's a sweetheart, and I love her. And I went to high school with her. Had a big crush on her
Hmm.
in high school. Anyway, doesn't really matter. I've talked to her recently, and we have both, I mean, just like sitting over beers talking about this stuff, we've both talked about the difference between a production artist and a fine artist
Hmm.
and what happens between just the way that we're perceived. You and I are production artists. Yeah,
Hmm.
right. Well, I had a crush on her in like, 11th grade. I find it fair. I don't have a crush on her anymore, but I did in 11th grade. Now
Hey,
she's
what happens in the 11th grade stays in the
stays in the
11th
11th grade.
grade.
Um, I actually recently told her that, and she's like, "You did? I didn't know that." I'm like, "Of course not. I didn't tell you." Not like you
It
walk
would
up
be
to the cute
awkward if
girls
I
in
told
school and
you,
say,
then you
"Hi, I
know.
have a crush on you."
Hi,
Right?
I had a crush on you in the 11th grade.
I told her now because it's funny because we're both pushing 50.
Yeah.
Much more entertaining now. But anyway, we've been sitting and talking about the difference between production artists and fine artists.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out how is it we can pivot production art a little bit better so that we can also get in on this, work 3 hours and or 3 days and make 50 grand aspect of art, you know.
Well, the other problem,
You're just gonna admit that right here, right now, right, Brent?
um, what I will
That's
say
fair.
is when I started delving into gallery art and going into galleries specifically, I noticed something that's not in my nature that fights it, and that
Mm,
is interacting with social circumstances and interacting with people to get ahead
right.
is very difficult for me.
Yeah. This particular artist friend of mine, she's a epic extrovert. She's out
Yeah.
there everywhere. She
Um,
doesn't have a problem talking to people. It's one of the reasons why I had a crush on her because she
but
just like
yeah,
everybody's buddy, you know,
yeah,
super
and
friendly.
I, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like the reason why I can do the show and not like internalize like a freak out is because it's just me and you talking on the show. And yeah, we have Brent, we have Ghost Hand, we have Donald sometimes, and we have other people that show up. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying
No,
that
but
like
you kind
mainly
of feel
that's
like they're our buddies too. I mean,
yeah,
it's a
it's
difference. We've gotten to know them.
yeah,
They're our friends. They're our buddies, and so it's
yeah,
not quite as scary. I think
yeah.
um, if we had 60 or 70 people over here in this talkie thing,
Yeah.
you'd probably be a lot more intimidated.
Right. And also at the same time, like I have a tendency of like saying the oddest things at the oddest times when I'm nervous around people. I mean, I'm pretty sure the show in itself has actually proven that multiple occasions, and I'm pretty sure I've done that to you on multiple occasions.
I'm okay with it though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're okay with it, but like if you're trying to get into a gallery and you're sitting there talking to someone, and then you bring up a whole like weird ass subject about like what the what the scientific fear name for becoming pregnant is, it's kind of weird. But at the same time, I tend to say that stuff around women who are either trying to hide that they're pregnant or they have not found out they're pregnant yet. It always
So,
happens.
yep.
It always happens.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Brent's like, it's your quirk. We're okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things of like, for some unknown reason, like I can analyze the room and figure things out, but then I open my mouth and I will say the wrong thing all the time.
Right.
And it's not that I do it on purpose. I don't. I try not to, but it just seems to sort of happen.
Right.
So,
Right. It's all good. I don't have a problem with it. You're fine by me. I am so. I mean, anyway. All I'm really kind of getting to the TLDR on this is
yeah.
that I kind of feel like I'm curious about the concept of NFTs and whether that could be an access point for us,
Right.
whether we could use that. And I also don't like the impact on the environment, but I do know that people are trying to fix it so that the NFTs still have the same concepts, but aren't as processor heavy. Like take time to process or something, as opposed to taking computing power to process. So, and that makes sense to me. Because right now, the value that is actually literally being imparted on Bitcoin is computational power. And that's the value that it's using. And so when you look at the price per unit, it's literally putting how much computational power does it require to do this one unit, and then putting a value on that computational power. And so they're making it intentionally intense because computational power is relatively cheap. I mean, really, honestly, we all have it, right? I mean, right here in the box below this desk right now is enough computational power of, let's say X, 20 gigaquads. It doesn't really matter. The point is that they want, if they think that one computer is 20 gigaquads, then they need to make sure that a Bitcoin is worth 2 million gigaquads. So that it's not just my computer that just real quickly just creates a bunch of Bitcoins and throws them out there, because then there's no value to it. So I get it. I get the concept. That's actually like taken some effort for me to understand, because I'm not really that kind of person. So it's really rough. But I've been interested in it because, like I said, usually speaking, the day-to-day artist who does day-to-day work, not a very valued individual, even though people consume that work all the time.
Production artists make consumable art,
right?
And that's like
food.
Like everyone's like, "Oh, well, why are you charging so high for your custom work?" Because it's custom,
right?
It's kind of like when people, going back to the whole fine art versus production art. When a production artist actually does fine art, it shocks people
Right. I've actually thought about
because
going into fine art too.
like they're like, I didn't realize you could do this, and I'm like, usually I'm like in my responses, well, I'm sorry. Um,
I didn't know you could do this, Pepper.
sorry.
Okay. I have
Like,
skills.
do you not realize that you hire me to do art?
Right? It's like
Mhm.
I actually do have skills and
Yeah, I mean,
stuff.
it's just like it's one of those moments in my life where it's just like, I don't know how to take this, so
Right?
I'm just gonna say this.
Smile and yeah. Oh, that's not a bad idea. I mean, we could do some really interesting fine art watercolors. You
I
and I
mean,
could. And
I
I've
have
been
like that
meaning
big
to.
sheet of paper, so
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to. I have. I made somewhere along the line. I made a really small piece about this big, and it's a landscape, and it actually turned out really cool. And I liked that
Mhm.
one landscape that I did. It was really neat, and I was like, "Huh, wonder if there's a way I could make it bigger." I made a. It was just a. It was a little mountainous desert area leading to a port at sea, and I put the ocean out there and little ships out in the in the bay, and
Well,
maybe, or maybe they don't have. I actually feel. I mean, because Ghost Hand's somewhat right. I
I
feel kind
mean,
of. I feel like it's the
I'm
other.
not disagreeing with what he said.
I'm not disagreeing with what he said either. However, I also think they have too low of an expectation of production art.
It's okay. I view it as this. It's like,
Like we could level that and it'd be better.
yeah, like okay. It's kind of like when someone sits there, hires multiple artists on a project. Each artist gets a specific role,
Right.
and they all have to flow together, like with the same type of similar style, everything like that. You get the style choices that you need to adhere to, all of that stuff.
Right.
Each one of these artists does the style in what they envision. There's not, and if there's no like art director to actually show like how you're supposed to do everything, um, then it's gonna still look slightly disjointed, no matter what. And that's where the high expectations part of Ghost Hand was talking about, um, probably is there for like people who hired these artists, because in their mind all these artists can do the same type of thing. They can get everything together, they can figure it out themselves, but not all artists work together in a friendly manner.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
You know, like I've been on artist teams where I've been straight up backstabbed by other artists, so
Well, I think that that's also a function of humans. We have
yeah.
there's two kinds of humans in the world. They're the people who assume that everybody's evil and the people who assume that everybody is nice. And the people who assume that everybody is evil tend to be jerks to other people because I mean they're going to do it anyway. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah,
have the mentality that you're going to screw me over anyway. I might as well get the jump on you. You know,
right.
and so that makes for crappy people sometimes, which
Yep.
I'd love to say it wasn't their fault, but I mean, you have to take responsibility for that function.
Well, um whatchamacallit, I honestly, like with this Instagram thing, like I kept saying to Bill yesterday, like, why would someone do this to me? Like, I feel like someone purposely targeted me because of who I was.
Right.
And like, I looked at my numbers from before my account was taken over, and I'm like very small compared to a
Yeah.
lot of other people.
Yeah.
Like, why would you purposely go after someone who doesn't really have a huge following?
Because you're an easier target.
Yeah.
I think actually, when you get to, let's say, for example, Amelia Clark, her account is maintained by people and they have money. And so if someone were to try to take over her account, there would be major pushback, and she
Yeah.
probably would be uh, her account would be restored within hours.
Right.
Um, so the reason they go after people like you is you have a big enough following, because you do have about 4,500 people, give or take, in your entire setup there. You have a big enough following
Yeah.
that they're hoping that they will get one who will follow their little Bitcoin scheme.
Yeah.
And so one for, 2 hours worth of work is no big deal, or is a good return. It's the same
Right.
thing with why we get spam all the time
Yeah.
in email. It takes 5 seconds for me to set up an email and send it to 1 million people. If I get one person who buys my product from that, I win.
Yeah.
In the meantime, 999,000 people are going, oh God, I can't even find my, like I
Yeah.
get 300 emails a day into my Hotmail account now. A day. When I go to, and that's with Microsoft aggressively pulling crap out of it, and they're super aggressive.
I am happy that I have a Mac, and basically like it's kind of aggressive as well with it, like scanning the
Macintosh
emails.
and Microsoft. Well, I got my Hotmail account in 1999, maybe 1998.
Yeah.
So I have some, I mean, there are people who I work with from day to day that were born after my Hotmail account. So, last night
My
we were at a
original
restaurant, and the
my
waitress who was working with us was born after my Hotmail account. So, you know,
well,
so
I mean, I have I have an email that I go back to every so often, but it's an email from high school.
yeah,
It's a Gmail account, obviously, now, but it was basically a Yahoo account because they were free. And I literally would have to go to a library to, so I would go to a library, sign into the computer, and check my email all in there.
right.
That's literally on where I was at this point in my life. Because I did not, like, my family did not have internet at home. Even though I went to a private school, I did not have internet at home, folks. All right, I had to go
You're
to the
just saying,
library. I had to go to the library either at my school to access the internet, or the library up the street from my mom's house, or the library near. Well, no. Let me back up. Or my grandma's house. And that's
your
usually
grandmother.
why I was studying at my grandmother's house. But I'll be realistic. Most of the people I went to school with, they had internet access. They set up Gmail account, like they set up all their email accounts through like AOL, Yahoo, Lycos, all of that stuff. I will say people found it weird that I didn't have an email address by the time I was a sophomore in high school.
Right. But it was one of those
So
interesting things I recently found. It was kind of cute. I found the first email that my dad sent me. And it was, he sent it to my Juno account, because that's what I had back then, was a Juno account. This is before my Hotmail account. And it was, hey guy, this is your old dad trying to join the 20th century. It's like, that's what he literally wrote. And it's so funny. Even now, when I read it, I found it and I screen capped it because I didn't want to lose the actual text. So I screen capped it so that I could save it as in my memories file because it
Yeah.
comes from 1994 or 1995, somewhere in there, early 90s, mid 90s. But
Yeah.
every time I read it, I hear it in his voice, with his like, hey guy, this is your old dad, because like he had this like radio announcer sort of swagger to all of his stuff that he would say when he was being specifically like weird like this. And
Yeah.
it was endearing to read it, especially since he's passed on now. And it was
Yeah.
endearing to read that and go and still hear his voice in my head. Luckily, with my dad, we've known that he's been going downhill for a decade. So I've spent the last decade recording him. I've got hours upon hours of recordings of him. So I just haven't been able to bring myself to listen to them yet, but I'll get there in time and it'll be nice. Right.
Well,
And
it's
that's
kind of
true.
like,
Ghost Hand's got a good point there, which is
yeah.
it's amazing how long ago. I mean, I have the original like internet map of DARPANET, which was
Mhm.
1973. That's as
Right.
old as me.
My grandparents had one of the first modems that
Yep.
were put
My
out so
dad
that
did
you
too.
could send. So, okay, I want to point this out. This modem and the whole connection with this modem was literally so that you could send relatives digital cards.
Yeah.
That's
But
all this was supposed to be for. It was like to send like 8-bit and 16-bit cards.
my dad had a company in 1978 that he started called Information Management Systems. And he started it in 78. And the whole point behind it was to use computers to manage business things like accounting and things like that. So your company would start up and you would hire his company to manage your accounts through this stack of computers in the back of
Mhm.
not you in the back of the room that sat there and did the ticka 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 ticka. It really didn't, but because they were getting better by then, by the 70s. But he had this tan modem, which had two suction cups on it, and you take the phone off the hook and you put it on the suction cups. So I mean, like just like this phone right here, the same kind of handpiece, right?
Mhm.
You put it on the suction cups, and it was 300 baud. 300 baud. I inherited that modem. Dad didn't want it anymore. He'd gotten a better modem as time went on. So when I was in high school, he gave me that modem. So I had the suction cup modem, which you put your phone on and dialed the BBS, and the BBS was called a bulletin board system. So we're
Mhm.
talking 1989, so 10 years later. That modem was still around 10 years later. But in 1978, it was top of the line, super awesome. And by 1989, when I was using it, it had already kind of turned yellow because it was one of those
Yeah.
that was already sort of computer tan. But if you spent too much time in the sun, it would turn orange.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it started going orange. And, but I remember the thing I loved about it most was the transmission buttons on the front. They had these little beaks inside there. So it was a plastic cylinder. And
Yeah.
inside the plastic cylinder was a black painted, looked like a duck beak. And when you press the button, the beak would open and there'd be an orange dot in there. And that's how you knew it was on. And then when you press the button again, it would press back out and the little beak would close over the orange button and it was off. So it wasn't powered. There was no power involved in that light, the power indicator, and things like that, the transmission indicators. And I sat there forever just pushing the button to watch the little thing go erky, erker, erky, erky, erky. It was so cool. And remembering that mechanical button was like, that's how old this was. It was
Yeah.
so old, it did not have a light bulb or an LED in it because the light bulbs at the time were still big.
Yeah.
And so that was my first modem. It was 300 baud. And then no, it wasn't. It was 150 baud. That's right. Because then I bought a 300 baud modem. And the weirdest thing about the 300 baud modem was that it was a box and you plugged in your phone lines in the back. And I'm like, who does that with a modem? You know, where am I? My
That's
phone.
the one that my grandparents eventually did get to.
Right.
Well, and it's what's funny is I remember when the internet came out. I remember people going, "Oh, it's just a fad. It won't actually be anything. Don't worry about it." And then I think it's like fourth grade for me. Maybe it was probably high school for you.
Right.
About
what year?
Well, fourth grade, I would have been 12. So that's early 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. I graduated high school in 92. So.
Okay. So around that time.
Yeah, I was already out by then. I was already out. I escaped.
So around that time, we started doing what was known as computer lab, and we got, Oregon Trail.
You have died of dysentery.
So instead of typing classes, because I initially actually had to start doing papers, and I think my class and the class right after me were the last to do this. We actually had to do papers on a typewriter.
My first novel was written on a typewriter.
And so we actually had to type it all out. My grandmother had one of those wonderful, you type everything in and then it types everything out all at once machines.
I have a story about that. Yep.
And eventually the following year, they were like, "Oh, okay, so you guys need to type everything on a computer. And if you don't have a computer, you have to do it in class." And I was like, "Okay, we don't have a computer yet." So my grandparents, yeah, Oregon Trail is probably, you always have to look out for dysentery. Cow chips are down, man. Cow chips are down.
Oh, well. I use a screen cap from Oregon Trail if anybody ever wants me to work, but they don't want to pay me, and I just post, "You have died of exposure."
Yeah. Which is another thing that you actually died from.
Right. That's why I've got a screen cap. Sure, it says "You have died from exposure." And so anybody who's like, "I'll give you exposure for it," I'm like, "You have died from exposure." I'm like, I'm not messing with this.
Yeah.
I got better things to do in my life.
But the other thing is I remember as a kid this all happening and all the adults basically saying no, and then in school they're like, "Nope, this is the direction that we're seeing business go towards, and so you need to learn this."
Right.
And had it not been enforced for businesses to kind of grow in that direction, I don't think social media would have. Social media definitely pushed businesses into the internet for sure, because it was one way to get your name out there fast in the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, social media, everyone forgets that Facebook initially was actually supposed to be for college students. You had to have a college student email in order to get an account with Facebook.
Yep, you had to have something that ended in edu.
Yep. And the whole point to it was to reconnect from friends from high school, from elementary, from middle school, from if you were a foreign exchange student, the students in America that you were friends with. You weren't supposed to keep your profile. once you left college, you were supposed to get all of your contacts and leave Facebook.
Yep.
But then they opened it to the general public, and that's when
That happened when we were in
the social media wars of the early 2000s. Don't you remember them? MySpace used to be a thing.
I was actually going to say that was I remember that I was in Japan. Yeah, I was in Japan, my first year in Japan, when we saw the news that Facebook was opening up to normal people. And so in 06, I went ahead and got my first Facebook account. And it's interesting because I'm still Guy.Davis922, which means that there's 921 Guy Davises in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And I got it in 2006. So I think that either they had duplication of, they had duplication of something going on.
Yeah.
And database duplication of some sort. So it's like, well, okay. But anyway, so yeah, that was, and then I started friending all of my friends, which is one of the reasons why it's humorous whenever it starts doing the, you've been friends with James for, 14 years. And everybody's like, wow, that is a long time. And I'm like, yeah, James and I went to high school together. So I've been friends with him since 1989.
Yeah.
And so it's not been 14 years.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
30.
like it's kind of like when my aunt or one of my cousins do one with another family member. They always start off with, "Well, it's been a little bit more than 10 years,"
Right.
Well,
it was in the early days. It would say, "You and Mike Davis have been friends for 5 years," and I'm like, before that, I just hated my dad. That's just the way it went.
Yeah.
Like I'd make wisecracks every time because, it was one of the first things we realized was me in Japan. If Dad got a Facebook account, I was posting to Facebook things that were going on as I went through Japan. It made for a better and easier to use than my blog. And at the time I was blogging, and the blog was kind of a pain in the butt, and it didn't upload pictures well, and you had to format all the stupid pictures, whereas Facebook would just let you just throw pictures up there and then write stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, this is so much easier, and I'm going to use Facebook to just blog about my experiences in Japan. So my dad joined Facebook to read my what was going on in Japan because he wanted to know. At that time, my sister was stationed somewhere. When I was in Japan, my sister, I think, was in LA. And so, she wasn't having that really of an interesting time. But then right after I came back from Japan, she got stationed over in Europe. And so, like, my dad's like, well, great. I'm just sitting here just watching you two just live your lives all over the world. I'm showing pictures of temples and, weird things in Japan. And then she starts showing pictures of France and, and then London and, Berlin and things like that. And
like yours is just like, he's just going around one country.
Right. I know. Well, Europe is,
look at here. She's
Europe
traveling.
is pretty small, relatively speaking. Japan's surrounded by water. It's very hard to go to another country. Requires
it's kind of
like a boat.
Kind of like the updated version of Cardcaptor Sakura, the clear card chapter that they're doing right now. I went ahead and I watched it, and Mei Ling, like that character, Mei Ling Lee, is hysterical because she goes, well, it's not a long flight to Hong Kong. I'll be back.
Right.
And I'm like, what little child knows on how to say something like that? Like,
right? Because it's like it actually is kind of a pain to get to Hong Kong.
It is. Well, and especially since everything happens in Tomoeda, And I looked it up. They do have an airport in Tomoeda,
They
yes.
do.
But like I'm like, wait, they show these kids like literally being able to run to the airport. Like
Uh-huh.
how close, how like condensed is Tomoeda in real life? Like it makes me kind of wonder.
Well, I
Like I
wasn't
do
that far, even though I was out in the boonies, and I always talk about being in the boonies because I was. It's relative. I was relatively in the boonies,
yeah,
um, but I wasn't that far from Narita. I was
yeah,
like 2 trains,
yeah,
so it took like, I would want to. I'd say probably about 45 minutes to get to Narita by train, and
yeah.
that presumed transfers and things, so wasn't that big of a deal. It
Yeah, I
cost
just
about like 400 yen or 500 yen, so about $5 to get.
yeah, like it's just for me it's just like okay, um social media does allow at the beginning of it, it allowed people to check up on family and friends whom they don't necessarily talk to every day.
Yeah,
But then it became a habit of, well, if everything's good on social media, why do I have to call and talk to them?
well,
Because in the early days, people didn't really put up what was bothering them. They put up
right,
what that was making them happy.
right. That is one of the that's one of my biggest kind of epiphanies that I'm running into now.
Yeah.
We all have, everybody is blaming Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that for the divisiveness of the world, but the truth of the matter is it's what we choose to put out there.
Right.
And though I do concur that Facebook and Instagram have probably helped by trying to raise bad stuff and suppress good stuff, the truth is you can't really say, it's somebody else's fault that you've only posted, negative, divisive memes about, whatever is your political alignment.
Yeah.
So I've made it a point now. I'm no longer posting anything on my social media except I'm gonna follow the classic dinner rule. You're not supposed to talk about politics or religion at dinner.
Hmm.
That's the classic dinner rule. That's my new rule for social media. I don't talk about politics or religion. And I was getting into other people's threads and talking about those things, and now I'm starting to think that that's not acceptable anymore. So
Well,
I'm trying to get out of getting into other people's threads and arguing with them.
right, and it's kind of like I've gotten into arguments with people online, yes, especially when it came to like someone sitting there telling me that no type of protein is suitable, no like replacement protein is suitable to meat. Vegans have it wrong. Yeah, there's no one simple source that has the same type of complexities of that. And I like literally when like this is back when I was a vegan and I was like, here's like all the data on certain foods. Here you go. And he still insisted, no, well, you always have to do like this and that, and you have to use combinations and stuff like, look, these foods do have complete proteins. These foods need to be combined. You just need to learn to do it.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
And the person still was arguing. So basically, he got to a point where he was like thinking that he was satisfied, right? And I was like, here's the studies.
Right.
I didn't get a message back, but this was a friend of a friend. This was back when my posts were all public.
Right.
And one of my friends commented on it and found it interesting because he was interested in the keto diet and he wondered how people do it the keto diet vegan, and it was what I originally posted had ties to that.
Right. Right.
But like, I'll be realistic. I also kind of I wish I could just leave social media in general, but as artists we kind of need it,
We
unfortunately.
need it. Well, and And legitimately, it's not bad if we
Right.
don't make it that way. I mean, the problem we've got is that we make it bad. I mean, it's a combination of things that are occurring. I mean, I've just been kind of like I've been looking at what people choose to post, and it's like my comedian friends post jokes.
Yeah.
I think it's hysterical. They just make one shots, and I love that. And I'm like, these people are actually actively trying to make it a better place here. You
Yeah.
know, they're just one shot jokes, usually dad joke esque. Not, it's fun. It's cute. Artists are trying to post more art on there and stuff like that. And even the average person is, I'm noticing, some of my friends are posting pictures of their cats. I remember my dad used to complain that all social media is used for is people to post pictures of their food. It's like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I'm like, it's all right. You don't have to get it. That's not the point. Um, but it was
No,
kind of,
no, I completely get. I completely get. Like,
well, that's,
there was a moment where social media was nothing but food.
yeah,
It was before people realized that they could post pictures of cats
right. Exactly.
and
And
then
so,
post pictures of dogs
right. Well,
and
and
post pictures
now,
of turtles,
right. Well, and nowadays, I kind
memes,
of wouldn't mind if social media was just everybody's dinner and their cats, preferably not at the same time. Um,
or
you, um,
or your cat eating your dinner.
or you eating your cat for dinner. All of these combinations
Oh,
are bad.
guy, come on.
Hey, have you met my cat? I don't know
You
where
know,
he went. Speaking of,
you say that, but I remember I had at in a previous marriage, I
in a
had
previous
this
life,
in a previous life. I had this book series that basically was a detective manga.
uh-huh.
Basically, it was like a teenage detective. His father was like like a very special um, detective as well, and so was his grandfather. So this kid's mind was like kind of wired to be a detective.
Right.
Um, and they're at this place, and he takes this girl that he likes, and he takes his best friend, and his father is there. Someone's murdered, and like basically the kids there are like told like go in your room, stay there until we come get you, blah blah blah.
Right.
um the person that was killed, right before he was killed, he literally looked to the woman that brought like 4 or 5 cats with her to the banquet, after she said, "I can't find my fluffykins."
Yeah.
And the guy who was killed was basically said, "Well, I don't know where Fluffykins is, but the chef found a really good, cat for what I wanted for dinner tonight." And it actually shows like he actually had the chef skin the cat's fur and cook it Peking style.
Nope. 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 Nope.
Yeah,
Nope. Nope.
this is in a manga,
In
folks.
a
This is
manga.
not like, I don't think it will be reprinted. But I was just like, this is kind of weird because this is the first time I've seen anything in Japan reference a cat dish.
Right.
So
That's still kind of nope. There's a lot of nope in that.
yeah.
I got a lot
But
of nope problems going on here.
yeah,
So
I mean,
you're like, I may make it through
I
this
think,
discussion.
yeah, I'm getting tired. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Um,
Like I had
but
said, we can stand down at any point here.
okay. Well, all joking aside, memes with dad jokes, by the way, are probably the best ones right now, especially when you involve He-Man or Skeletor. I don't know if anyone's seen these memes.
I love the ones where Skeletor does blah 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 blah, and then runs away and says, "Follow me for more disturbing facts." They do
Well,
that with
it's kind of like the first one I saw was about the baby in the womb.
yeah,
So if you think about it, the baby in the womb essentially is a person in a mecha.
right. It's a mecha pilot.
It's a mecha pilot in a
It's like
human.
the initial mecha pilot, and I'm
Yeah.
like, actually, kind of like that thought process. I was
And then
once a
like
mecha pilot.
but it got me thinking like what would happen if there was an anime that came out that literally had babies as mecha pilots.
I'm just saying.
It would be a very weird thing. Like I can't picture anyone killing off any of the pilots,
right?
Because they're babies.
They're babies. That's a serious threat.
You know, but like how do they determine to activate them? That's my question.
But I mean, there's all kinds of interesting it's one of the things that I'm making a point to do in my life now is very much taking control of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we all can do that as long as you follow the dinner rule, no posting about religion or politics, then we can actually clean up social media. Leave the religion and politics discussions for when you're sitting around with a buddy drinking coffee. That's totally acceptable. It's not like we should never talk about religion and politics and that's the other thing I've noticed. People take something where you say something like that and they take it to this extreme of, so you're saying we should never talk about religion or politics. How are we supposed to change everybody's mind, or whatever? And I'm like,
Well, it's kind of like when same-sex unions were legalized in the area that we're in.
right?
That was in 2014. It legalized on a Monday, and I got married on a Wednesday.
Right? Like,
And
you're serious about this.
I had already gotten a civil union documentation to be filled out by me and Bill. We were completely on board for doing a civil union. They contacted us and gave us a marriage certificate.
Right, and said we have
after going back, like on that Monday that it was allowed.
Right.
So I just want to point out, like, when that happened, I did have people on social media that basically were like making comments about it, and I'm like, both me and Bill, yes, we're happy that we got the right to be married. That's fine. But both me and Bill feel like we grew up with marriage being a sacrament of a religion. And we're supposed to have freedom between government and religion. We're not supposed to have it intertwined. Because we both grew up in the Catholic faith, so it was taught as a sacrament.
Right.
Like a sacred thing that you do within your church. So, like, I basically stated something, and they're like, well, then why do you have a rainbow on, like a rainbow thing in support of it? And I'm like, I have a rainbow thing on it because I'm marrying a man.
Right.
And it's kind of built in.
Right.
And they're like,
my dad and I had the same discussion too, because he was like, well, what's wrong with just calling it civil unions? And I said, because the government will still continue to say that civil unions can't do the same things as married people. And as long as that happens, civil unions cannot replace marriage. And he was like, that's a solid point.
Yeah, because like if you did replace all marriage licenses to civil unions,
then it'd be fine.
Your marriage, no one would be having this discussion anymore. It would be civil unions are only like the only thing the government does,
right?
And that is that.
That's totally fine.
And that would be just fine for a lot of people. But the problem is the term marriage and the term civil union are still ingrained in us as different things.
Right.
Civil unions don't give certain permissions in
Yep.
hospitals as marriages do.
Yep.
Like,
And
you can
that's
be in
the
a civil
biggest issue.
union. Yeah, you can be in a civil union with someone all you like, but at the end of the day, if your partner of like 20, 30 years passes away, your partner's family can come in and take everything from you because you're not protected by marriage laws.
That was exactly what I was trying to, what I ultimately tried to say was, hey, it's fine to think that, but the truth of the matter is that, it doesn't work that way until you get to the point where trying to decide what rank we've decided Mayrella is, and I think she's just a lieutenant junior grade. That's one of the biggest problems, is that you get to the point where if I was, let's say, Bill's cousin,
Yeah.
and I was also like, I hated you or whatever, and you had a civil union and I was next of kin, I
Yeah.
could literally cut you out of everything, even though
Yep.
you and Bill have been sharing a life together forever. But that was my biggest problem, was by government standards, your cousin who has decided that gay people are bad and evil and whatever, and hates the real thing I was saying was, this is a real thing that occurred. Dr. Sally Ride, who was the first American woman in space, she was in a relationship with another woman. NASA knew it, but the public did not. And the
Right.
reason was because if the public knew, then it would have been this big hoo-hoo-ah or frou-frou-ah, and everything would have just been terrible. But when she died, because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and because of all the protections of the family and stuff like that were in that thing, her partner didn't get anything, did not get
Right.
her benefits, did not. And NASA was actually mad about that. That was actually something that made NASA upset, but they're a government agency. They had to follow the government law. They couldn't not. And it was one of their this was a mistake, guys. We made an error, because here we have this hero, an American hero, just somebody who we should be proud of. And her legacy is that she's one of the people whom we turned our back on, her family.
Yeah.
And that's their opinion on this. Now, luckily, things have changed, but things changed after the fact. Things changed after this all happened. And so NASA,
it still doesn't make up though for what
doesn't make up for it.
done.
And that's a problem.
It's one of those things of, since we're basically talking hot topics already, essentially,
hey, I've got a great idea. Social media. We won't talk about religion or politics.
Yeah,
Pepper and I, religion, politics, religion,
politics. Yeah. So basically, when I was younger, I had a lot of relatives that basically said to me, like, when you pass away, I want a piece of your artwork. Like, I want your artwork because if you pass away, then it's worth more. And it got me thinking, like, I think I'm going to have a clause in my will
that says Guy gets all your artwork.
That states, like,
of course, if you give it to me,
I pass away, upon
sit
my
here
death,
forever.
Upon my death, my family, my close family, like my husband, my children, in the future, blah blah blah, will take all my artwork, everything that I've ever drawn that has not sold, and burn it. And that way, no one can sit there and go, but he promised. No, it's all being burned. Like, I don't care. I don't really care. I don't want people to sit there and fight and bicker over art pieces that I did. I don't want people sitting there saying that they have a claimed right to them. It's just, no, these pieces of art were done by me. I'm deciding where they are going. You don't have that. But also, since me and Bill are married instead of a civil union, I have the option of him basically me and him setting everything up so that nothing like that will ever happen. Like my family can't go after the pieces before they're burned because, it will be put in my will and he will be there when it's signed.
Right.
And the only pieces that won't be burned will probably be ones I either gave to Bill or gave to my kids.
Exactly.
So
it's a thing that does kind of bother me is people saying, I'm going to. I mean, my dad used to joke about that. That used to be a snarky joke that he was making, but you could always tell that he was doing it with me.
yeah,
Like laughing with me, not laughing at me. There's a difference. If you say, gosh, you should fake your death so your artwork will go up in value. That's a joke saying, isn't it stupid that your artwork is not valued while you're alive? It's only valued after you're
yeah.
dead. And
And
he's
then,
doing it with me. And he used to joke about that all the time.
But when I was a kid, I had a hard time.
That's not a problem, Brent. I'm pretty sure you will have a ton of our artwork.
You can probably buy one from me eventually. Like, I'm not saying I'm not going to do that, but
right.
What I'm saying is like when I was growing up as a kid, I would show a piece of artwork to, like, say my dad or my grandmother or one of my aunts and uncles or even my sisters, and they would always go like, wow, this is so good, do the whole praise thing. And then, like, sometimes they would follow it up with going, when you die, your artwork goes from being worth like $10 to 10,000. Right. So, they put like a monetary thing on it. And I think that's like where like I kind of got turned off by,
right. You're
like the whole like yeah. Eventually I stopped showing my artwork to people. That's basically what it was. And I also know that, like, by the time I was leaving college and I was going to an art school, I think some of my family members who were trying to discourage me into going into an art field, kind of are like, well, there's nothing we can do now. He's going to an art college. Like, there's nothing we can do. He has to he's doing that. That's what he wanted to do. Little known fact, I wanted to drop out of college because after starting my classes, I initially realized I didn't like it. Honestly, graphic design classes, in the program I was in, it was very good. It was one of those things of, like, I literally told my dad one day that I wanted to leave, and his version of basically the only reason why I would be leaving would be going into the military. And my mom basically saying, well, you're all in your head. Just complete it. You'll be fine.
It's all in your head, Pepper. It's all in your head.
All in my head. All in my head.
Just like the zombies.
I was just like, yeah, but like, if I got a chance to do that part of my life over, I think what I would have done is probably
song, and you're welcome.
Huh?
I'm saying.
What about Cranberries?
They're singing the song in their head now because I said it.
Oh, not the Lamb Chop song?
No, they're singing the zombie song in your head.
Zombie?
In your head.
No. If I could go back in time within my own body and redo and play out like sort of events, I think I probably would have gone to the public community college after I graduated high school.
Right.
Or not gone there, probably went to the school that I was thinking about going to, which is really kind of funny because it was radio.
Radio would have been fun.
It was a broadcasting school. It wasn't a college. It was a trade school, and they would teach you things about the radio industry.
There are
That's
things that I have regrets about.
yeah.
My dad was my dad had a beautiful voice, and he wanted to do a version of he was actually working on radio and stuff like that. And that was one of the things he wanted to do. And I don't want to say that I don't want to say that I have like
Brent, your face was not made for radio.
um but one of the things that does bother me is that he wanted very much to read uh The Raven and
Uh-huh.
put it out on the YouTube, and he was stopped because he couldn't figure out how to use YouTube. And now I'm like, I should have just taken my portable recorder and stuck it in his face and said, just read it. And had
Yeah.
him read it. And then I could have put it on YouTube. And I would have said, I'll put it on YouTube. But you do I was fatigued. I was worn down. He'd been sick for a while, and he wasn't going to push because that's not my father. It's not the kind of
Yeah.
person he was. But you were talking about radio, and I didn't mean to hijack this, although look
No,
at
it's
me
okay.
hijacking your entire thing. But that's one of the things was that radio was a thing for him. He had a beautiful voice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I think I would want to go as like a radio talk show host. They had programs there that basically had you working behind the scenes.
Right.
And almost every single radio station that was based in South Florida used a lot of the kids, a lot of the teenagers that went into the trade school there for interns
Right.
so that you could actually get in their paid internships. They're not like, oh, well, you're an intern, you don't get paid. No, no, these were paid internships while they were going to school so that you had experience and you got a paycheck, and you when you got paid from there you got the ability to pay back the school that you were going to.
Exactly.
So like looking back at it, I should have just gone with what I wanted to do, versus what was expected of me.
I totally follow that.
You know, but also at the same time I was also one of the people that was kind of pushing some of my friends to go to Japan for English teaching.
I dug that too.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
mean,
wanted to do that so
legitimately, I
bad.
did it.
And the problem was when I actually
When push
when I
came to shove, you didn't
no,
shove.
when push came to shove, like I was talking to some people who had did it prior to me, and they were like, yeah, I had to save up a whole bunch of money in order to do it because I didn't get paid my first month until like the end of the month from the school that I was working for.
Yep, that happened with us too.
And
True
so
thing.
they were like, when we ran out of money, we had to kind of figure out on what we needed to do. So a lot of them had to get like side gigs to get some extra income while in Japan, while they were working as English teachers.
For today, it's the second one. I'm getting messages from Fuzzy.
Oh, fuzzy.
So he's crawling in, so he's not in screen. That works. Works for me.
Yeah. So, but yeah, almost every single person that I knew that went over there, they basically were like, yeah, your first month's the hardest because you're living off of savings and whatever your parents were willing to send to you for money.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay. And that's basically where my conversation with like myself of doing it any further like ended, because like as much as I said I think that I would be very good at doing something like that, the initial trip, everything, I think I just don't think I would have had a good support structure if I went over there and had a hard time at first, and I needed to rely on people, I don't think I would have had that. And I think that's what
There wouldn't have
stopped
been
me.
much of a support structure. Although
Yeah.
that said, I know that my company that I was with at the time would have figured it out, and they were very good about exactly how much money you needed to bring. I mean,
Right.
they were like, bring about $3,000, and so if you can save $3,000, you're fine. Um, So
Well,
it's
one of my
interesting. Brent said that. Brent says that he wishes he'd stayed in the Marines. And I just had a discussion with a guy who's doing the work on our fence, and he's doing a phenomenal job, by the way. But this guy who's doing this work out there, he also is a Marine, and he was in from 94 to 98. And what he said was, he said, you know, at the time when I left, I hadn't seen any action or done anything, and it really made me mad. Now, I'm kind of glad. And I'm like, yeah, man, you are so much better off, because I've known people now that have seen action in the Army, no less. So not even Marines, Army guys who,
yeah.
didn't, and we're not even talking about Marines whom, they intentionally put in the action. These are Army guys who didn't want to go into action. They just wanted to like build stuff or whatever. And I've talked to these guys now, and it just breaks you. It messes with you so much, and it ruins your world. So, the Marines to see the world is great, but I still think the Navy is probably the best bet for seeing the world, because if you do actually end up seeing action in the Navy, usually it's your ship gets blown up and you sink and you die. So it's over. It's like, it's done. The odds of a Navy guy actually having to put a gun to some poor fella's head and pull the trigger and then live with that for the rest of their life is actually really slim. So I don't know, man. I don't know which is better. I really don't.
Well, I mean, I do know Marines who they still believe that if the Marines call them back to being a Marine, they will do it
Mm-hmm.
in a heartbeat.
Sure.
Bill's grandfather was in his old age was still convinced that the Marines would bring him back if they needed him.
Sure. Well,
So
and that's not abnormal.
no, it's
That's
not. I
that's
mean,
actually, a thing, and it's cool.
but I would like to point out that of all the armed forces that America has, the Marines are the only ones that actually I have seen that trend.
Right.
Most of the Army people, most of the Navy people, most of the
They're out, they're out.
their Air Force, they go in, they come out, they say they miss it, but they don't want to return to it. You
Yeah,
know,
I tell that to my bestie. I keep telling him to just put an end to it.
you know.
No,
But
hard.
also at the same time, like there's also benefits of staying in,
There
and
is.
that's probably what Brent is talking about, and which is the things that he probably wants, he's thinking about is probably what he would have wanted to focus on.
Absolutely.
But I also know many people who go into the military, and when they do come out, like because of their military lifestyle, they never really found like relationships that they wanted to start or anything like that. Like they like curtailed their entire life. Yeah,
Yeah.
once a Marine,
Once a Marine,
always a
always a Marine.
Marine.
Truer
Um,
words, man. Truer words.
so like I have a friend who was in the military for like almost 15 years, and he got married later. He was like in his 40s, and he has a child now, and he's the child's older. He's around 5 or 6, but he's pushing 50 now. You know, um, I have a lot of friends who went into the military with those types of stories if they wanted families and kids, and they waited until they were done with their service.
Sure.
Whereas like the other ones I know who had wife and had kids while in service, it was usually much harder for their family home living when they came back.
Yeah. Well,
Because
I feel like being in service is kind of like, well, my friend and I make jokes about this all the time. My time in Japan is, he equates that, my sister does too, equates it to service. It was a different world, there was a different environment, everything was radically different. You weren't living in the culture you grew
you're
up
born
in. Everything was, there were rules, there were regulations, things like that. Bad things happened. Traumas occurred, things like that. I feel like that's so they equate the and bad coffee. That's a big deal, because like the coffee in the teacher's room. So I'm just
no, I'm like hearing that, and I was like reading what Brent
Yeah,
said,
it's
and
fair.
I'm like, I mean, and to a degree, I will actually agree to that. Like
Yeah.
the friends I have now from college, my college time in my late teens and early 20s, I'm still friends with many of them.
Yep. Yeah.
Almost all of them are older than me. Point that out, like that I'm throwing that out there right now. Most of the people I went to school with that are my age, I talked to on and off, but like the closer ones that I was closer to, I talked to more often. They were usually older. You know, I do believe, like, even though I would, like, I was talking about leaving after my first semester, college. I believe if I had done that, I still would have kept in contact with these people because I did enjoy their company.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it. Like, I literally, if I had decided to change my course, move away from Miami and go back to West Palm Beach or Jupiter, and go to the vocational school for the radio place, I think that I would have just done that. Had I not told my father first, I think I would have not have had the fear of being forced into the military, which is like in my late teens when I was like around, this happened around when I was 18 years old and I had just signed up for the draft, and it was before 9/11 hit. That was the other thing that was like another factor. I freaked the hell out.
Yeah.
Like, I was literally freaking out.
It's funny.
9/11 occurred.
So, yeah, I've got a 9/11 story for that one. Yeah.
Like, well, and I didn't freak out like in the normal freak out. I freaked out in the most autistic way possible.
Right.
I literally asked someone, "Are they calling for people who are registered to be drafted? Like, are they doing that?" And they're like, everyone had to keep assuring me that they were not, because that was like my main focus. Is like, they're not going to do that. And then the other thing that happened was we had students from Japan, and this goes back to when you and I had talked about World War II and facts about America dealing with Japan in World War II.
Confused, yeah.
And so we had a student from Japan, and someone sits there and goes, yeah, I don't know if they're going to start rounding up Middle Eastern students and stuff and putting them in places. And someone's like, what do you mean? And they're sitting like right next to Mayako. And I felt so bad because she was like curious about what was about to be said, but then she was like completely dumbfounded that America did it. Because someone brought up the encampments of the Japanese.
Right.
And everyone was like, okay. And like midway through the conversation, she had to get up and leave. She didn't realize like America did this to Japanese citizens of America.
Right. Yeah. Welcome to our history, whether we like it or
like,
not.
Good or bad, like Americans are
not one of our better
bad.
days.
I taught about this, but essentially, yeah, like that's basically what it happened. Like when the first plane hit, I was on my way to school, and like my friend at the time, Lisa, she basically looked at me and said, "Just turn around. We're all going to the dorms. We can't be near these buildings." And I was like, "Why? What's going on?" And she explained, "We're near government infrastructure buildings. We can't be at school now." And I'm like, "What's going on?" And that's when I was told, like, a plane hit one of the two towers, one of the twin towers in New York. And at the time, I had a roommate who his brother worked in the twin towers. And luckily, he's one of those cases where he felt like he needed to call out that day.
Oh.
And he literally survived by taking a mental health day.
Yeah, well, it worked.
So, like, I had, like, that was, like, a crazy freaking day. That's one thing.
Yeah, I was there. So that was an interesting day. The morning of that, we were all off for whatever reason. And so my roommate and I, and there were two roommates that we had, and we were all sleeping in. And all of a sudden, the phone rang and then rang and then rang and then rang, and it wouldn't let up. And finally, James, my buddy James, answers the phone, and it's my mom. And my mom said, "Turn on the TV now. Go get Guy up." And so James comes over and knocks on my door, opens the door, and goes, "Is your mom? She said, turn on the TV right now." And so I turned on the TV, and that's when we saw the first tower burning. And Mom was on the phone, and I had the phone to my ear, and I said, "Well, in 1940 something, 1946 or 1947, a B-25 struck the Empire State Building, but it was foggy, and this looks like a perfectly clear day." And at that point, that's where the second tower hit, or the second tower was hit. And James was watching it, and he goes, "Some country just ceased to exist." That was his first words. And then he was like, "Oh crap, and I'm going to get activated," because he was a lieutenant.
Yeah.
And so
like,
mom immediately said, "Is James going to get activated?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I guess so. He thinks so."
Yeah. I mean, I like my very first thought, like literally my first thought, because the first tower was hit, and I went back to the dorms. I was hanging out with people. Everyone had the news media on, and the news station there was actually literally showing video footage of the first plane going into the tower.
Right.
And they're on the ground. They're trying to get everyone to come out. Blah blah blah. And that's when like we were all sitting around the TV, and someone was like, "Hush! Like, shut up, everyone! Like, something's wrong." And the news reporter like kind of like looked up, and she was like, "Are you guys seeing this?" And that's when the other plane hit. And that's like that was like the scarier moment, because that when they hit the second one, a lot of news stations kind of went out. They went dead. They went dark. And then at least for where I was in Florida, they did like this weird thing where they jammed all of our cell phones, and they stopped phone lines from working.
That's really weird.
So like when I finally had a phone that was working, like that's when my family basically was able to finally get a hold of me and find out if I was okay, um, and inform me if any
Was it
family
that, or
members
was, or
were
did,
part
because
of it.
we had jammed lines, like the
We had
lines got jammed. And I
well,
know because I at the
so
time was working with Time Warner,
so
and
it
so
wasn't exactly because cell phones weren't working.
right.
So
Oh, that's right. Bush was
yeah,
in Florida.
yeah, and during the
That's
time,
right. You
yeah,
were near President Bush. That's
yeah,
exactly
I
right.
was very yeah. So they jammed the phone lines. They just jammed communications altogether because I was in Miami, and yes, Bush was in Florida. I
He
hate
was
to
in
say it,
elementary school. That's right.
yeah, because and also at the same time, his younger brother also was the governor of Florida.
Yep.
So that's
That
the
makes
other,
sense. That makes a lot more sense. They may have been actually,
yeah,
because I know that Time Warner here, they were overloaded. And it
yeah,
was
no,
legit. They were legit overloaded. I mean, like it wasn't. I knew the guys. I had been in the knock. Just
yeah,
like I retired from Time Warner in July, so I had only been out of Time Warner for like 3 months. So I was still in regular email communication with the guys at Time Warner, and
yeah,
like I had, and I was even in the Manhattan group. That was the
yeah,
group I was with Manhattan. I was based out of Manhattan's group here in Denver.
yeah,
And so I was getting, at the time, I was getting emails from the Manhattan knock workers who were out there because the primary switch for Time Warner was in the basement of the time of the World
mm-hmm,
Trade Center, and so with AT&T's main switch, and so my switch workers who I had been working with, they had gotten out because they were only in the basement. It was just one
yeah,
floor up, and then they left. But they had all gotten out, but they were out there with their cameras taking pictures of like landing gear in the street and stuff like
mm-hmm,
that. And they were out there taking pictures, and they were emailing us here in Denver. And of course, that was getting forwarded to me. I actually still have those pictures on my hard drive. There was nothing gory, but like really interesting artifacts in that
yeah,
that were only taken by Time Warner switch operators who happened to be like, well, we're not staying around in this building, you know.
yeah,
And so, um, but I mean, that switch was gone. And
mm-hmm,
once Manhattan Switch went down, a lot of the network went out
yeah,
because Manhattan Switch, everything, as we used to always make a joke all the time at Time Warner, everything still somewhere along the line ended up on copper. It didn't matter whether it was on fiber optic here, there, and everywhere else. At the time, in 2001, we still had entire sections of the network that were sitting on old copper that had been put in 1890. And
yeah,
so, there was entire systems of the network that would go down just because the weather wasn't right. And, it was like miserable. But that was once the Manhattan knock went down, we were in trouble with the
yeah.
network, and the network was all kinds of screwed up.
Yeah. I mean, well, and it screwed up most of the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, it messed up the Eastern Seaboard because
Yeah.
that's where a lot of Ma Bell was originally set
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, we had lots of fun that didn't, and fun, I mean judiciously. But yeah, so I mean, in that instance, I guess you're right. They would have intentionally taken it down because the president was there. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like, but I know that the reason Denver went out was because the Denver knock went out of commission,
Yeah.
and there wasn't anything we could do about that. And I mean, like I said, I had buddies there who were like, nope,
Yeah.
we're just down. Our switches went out. They overloaded and they died. They
Yeah.
were like, we were trying. We tried to keep them running, and then they went poof. I was like, well,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So,
It was just, it was a
what a
very
day.
weird period. I honestly, I still agree with one of my friends from the military that it was definitely used as a ploy to go back into the Middle East. and enter that.
Probably. I'm
Um,
not going to disagree with that logic. I think we
I
do
don't
wag the dog a
think.
lot in our culture.
I think what should have happened in that scenario is we shouldn't have gotten involved. We should have just basically worked with the government over there to get the person who actually did the claiming of it, and then stayed out of their politics. But that's just me.
Well, there's a lot of America should have stayed out of X's or Y's politics. We
That
have a
is
habit of it. We have a horrible, horrible habit of getting into other people's politics.
honestly, I kind of wish that we stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
You
like
too.
I want it to happen, but like everyone's saying that China's gearing up to be the next America, but honestly, I don't think that would really work out for the rest of the world. So,
I think wagging the dog is occurring right now.
yeah.
I I've been in Japan, and trust me when I say there is no love lost between Japan and China. But Japan doesn't see China as big of a threat as we do.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to people who I think are on the ground and would know, the Japanese would know.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if anybody knows, the Japanese know.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I'm kind of wondering about the validity of some of these claims, because it's I hear that, China, like, I hear things that don't make sense. China's got like the largest navy in the entire world now, and that's going around as a meme. Well, maybe true, but
Uh
only
oh.
5 or 6
Messages from
ships are
Bill.
blue water, and that's a big problem. That's a big difference. You know,
You can have
hello,
oh,
Bill.
no, it's so good.
We were
Ah.
totally going to let Pepper go back to bed. Guess what happened?
Yeah.
We didn't let Pepper go back to bed.
He's right here. Messages
Uh,
from Bill.
the good thing about COVID, though, is both of you guys can get this stupid head cold, and both you can continue working until you don't feel like working, and then you sleep, and then you can work some more. In other words, now you both are working my schedule.
Yep.
Yep. So
So he came in here for a reason, most likely. He probably heard us talking.
No, I just wanted to get up and move my legs. And
there's nothing wrong with that. And we love you, so that all works as well. It all fits.
We're talking about China and how people think that China is going to replace America. Go. We're talking about with taboo topics, Bill.
Yeah,
Taboo
this whole thing started because I said, what would make social media a better place is if you do what Dad told you to do at the dinner table. Don't discuss politics or religion. And then we ended up immediately talking about politics and religion.
Politics and religion.
Like
That's the thing.
right off the bat, as if I had said nothing. And I'm not blaming Pepper because I also got it was my fault too.
The instant you put restrictions on it, that's now you have to.
Right? It's like required by law at this point. And it was really funny. And I think we lost everybody but Brent for it too.
Well, it's not. Look, it's religion and politics are not the easiest things to talk about. But if you do it in an open forum where you can say what you want to say and do what you want to do, and you basically bring up different aspects of like what's good, what's bad. It's kind of like when people sit there and tell me that Smurfs are communists. Well, no, that's not exactly a communistic society. They don't have a hierarchy. They only have one leader, and that leader is just primarily an organizer. It's not a dictatorship.
You're like, stop messing with this guy.
So
no, it's one of those things that it depends on how you like perceive the world. And I think really the truth is there are some people you can talk to just fine about politics and religion. And they can even be opposing views, people. Like I have a buddy who's conservative, and we'll sit there and because I lean liberal, and so we'll sit there and just argue over whatever happened today in Congress. And we can. And that's totally fine because we both have a perfectly reasonable like position, and we've both kind of gone, huh, that's a point I hadn't considered, or whatever. So
Bill's beard, by the way, is a very good head scratcher.
yes, it is you. It also will act like Velcro if you cut your hair too short, and then you'll be like
Yes.
stuck together, and you'll have to go. Actually, my wife came in this morning and kissed me on the cheek, and she's like, "Oh, you just shaved," and I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't realize I hadn't been, I guess." And she was like, "Thank you for shaving." I'm okay. Like sometimes
I think I want to shave my head bald. What do you think?
there you go. Then you won't have Velcro problems.
No. But maybe I should wax the head.
There you go. Actually, my buddy Alex is doing that right now. He's got mutton chops and he shaved his head. And like, talk about a look. He is definitely making a look. Like, and then he's extra, and then he's like doing that. He's like waxing it so it's shiny. And we get into meetings and he's like sitting there doing this. And we're like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm trying to reflect light into the camera. It's like really funny.
Well, I mean, I had a teacher in high school, and I literally I don't understand to this day what brought me to asking this, but I literally was like, "So, what do you do to make your head so shiny?" Because he was bald on
Right.
the top of his head.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, I just wash it." And I'm like, "Are you sure you don't wax it? Because that light bounces off of it really, like, you know." And he's like, "Nope, just wash it. Soap." And I was like, "Okay, well, good chat. Good thing I don't have you this semester." Bye.
Well, and I think there's a difference between shaving your head bald and being bald.
When I'm talking about shaving my head bald, I'm talking like going in with a razor, possibly just taking some wax and.
Right, but I think people who have gone pattern baldness don't have any hair. So
No,
you just, you don't have anything to not deflect the light.
No, I mean, and also at the same time,
see you in a sec, Brent.
At the same time, like my grandfather was bald. My dad wasn't. My grandfather, his father, was bald. I remember basically when I was really little, my very first 4th of July parade in Bristol, Rhode Island. I was about 3 or 4. Tabitha wasn't born yet, so it was most likely 3. And I have a picture of me on my uncle's shoulders. And I had pretended to go down and start eating his hair. And he responded, "Stop eating something when I have very little in that spot." Because little kids don't realize, like, bald people, as they start losing their hair, it becomes like something like they get attached to what's there still.
Right. I have 2. Leave them alone.
Yeah, and like my grandfather, when he started balding, it was kind of funny because when I was there for the memorial service, they gave me a bunch of pictures of my grandfather, and I had to do like these poster boards of him in like pictures with him and of him and with people and all of that stuff. And I was just like, okay. And I saw these pictures.
It also turns you gray. Just saying.
I mean, my hair is turning gray, and I understand that, but like
mine turned gray in my 20s.
I mean, it is what it is. It's a part of life.
It's what it is. That's why I'm all comfortable with it now. I'm like, I've had 20 years to get adjusted to it by this point.
Yeah.
It's like I'm slowly getting the peppered look.
Peppered looks good, but I was blonde. So when it went from blonde to gray, you really like it wasn't that much of a shade change.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just slowly gets
So,
lighter and lighter until it's
but
white.
my dad had hair, very black hair. Like his hair was black.
Yeah.
And when he went gray, it was salt and pepper, and it actually looked kind of cool. And that was neat. And then I was all bummed out because my hair didn't do that because I was blonde. So it just went, kind of different shades of light. And now it's all gray. And I agree with my dad, though. Both of our hair went silver. It didn't go yellow, like that yellowish
Yeah.
silver or yellow gray, which kind of makes it look, both of our hair went silver, and we both appreciated that. Whatever
Well,
gene
and
made our hair go silver, we're both
yeah,
appreciative.
because and I'm just gonna say, Brent, just
Isn't
because
that
it
the
doesn't
truth?
seem like we have the same level of stress doesn't mean I haven't experienced the same level of stress. I have gotten into points in my life where hair
Levels
has
of
started
stress.
falling out, and trust me, it was not fun. I thought I was gonna go bald, and then it turned out when
I
that
think the-
stress went away and I was finally, divorced from it, my hair started growing back miraculously, and I got a full beard now. What are you doing?
I think the funny part is I think he's making a snide joke about both of us having 11/12-year-olds. I think is the comment that's going on here.
Yeah, the 12
So-
the 12-year-old making you go gray. Now, I've been a 12-year-old that made parents go gray.
Yeah.
I'm the age.
So what we're saying is you
Yeah.
have about 12 or 13 years and you will join us. Oh, you will
Well,
join
no,
us. Both of you will
I'm already-
join
I'm
us.
I'm already going gray, so it'll just hasten it, really.
It just
Yeah,
hastens
like-
things.
I'll just be very poignant. Like I'm around the age where my dad and my mom started graying.
Right.
My dad has not fully grayed over. My mom has, but she dyes her hair, so you won't. Be
Right.
So.
Oh, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
this yet. So
Well,
I've
Brent,
been
I will say welcome, to parenting.
parenting.
Me and
It will
Bill have
happen.
like an opportunity to like adopt a child.
right, but I mean
Once that
that's right.
occurs,
That's kind of what Brent and I are doing is like, you'll get there. You'll
Yeah.
be there. You'll join us. You'll join us.
yeah, sure, I'll join you. I don't know how well I'll do
My
it.
mom dyed her hair too. It actually was one of those horrible moments because my mom dyed her hair and my dad didn't know that. And so when my mom passed away, we were at the funeral home and my dad was like, look, I'll go identify the body because you have to identify the body. Even when it's obvious, you still have to go identify the body. He's like, I don't want you to remember your mom that way. So, because he's like, and I thought that was a really kind gesture on my dad's part. Because he flew up here like that. I mean, like he was here before they put the funeral together and put her body in the funeral home.
Yeah,
So he went in and we sat there and then he came back and he goes, I don't think that's her. And we were like, whoa. And so luckily another friend of mine who had just been with her, like he had been staying with her because my mom took in wayward kids all the time. Him and his wife were homeless for a little while and stayed with her for a little while. Anyway, he went in and said, yes, it's her. It's just that she had dyed her hair and they'd washed the dye out when they cleaned the body. And so dad didn't recognize her because she was gray. And, my dad didn't recognize the gray hair. And of course, your face slackens and stuff like that. But one of the things about my mom was she was such an animated person. I actually was realizing this looking at photographs of her. She was such an animated person that it actually doesn't do justice.
yeah,
Because when you met her, she was moving and animated and always talking and da 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 da.
yeah.
So I could even see that in death, of course, everything would be slack and you wouldn't recognize her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting. Over the years, we've had 20 years to analyze this because my dad was horribly embarrassed about this. This was one of his, I can't believe I came back and said I couldn't identify your mom. I cannot believe that happened. And at first I thought he was joking too, because I knew that they had taken the body directly to the funeral home. And, there's no way they could have swapped the bodies. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, So at first I thought my dad was joking because my dad did have kind of a morbid sense of humor. And our family is very dark about death. and has always been sort of dark about, I mean, not dark,
Yeah.
but like irascible, I
I
guess.
would say you're probably along the same lines of my family. You don't think of it as a death. You kind of poke fun at it and make
Yeah.
it joyful,
Yeah.
because it's more of like you guys do more of like celebrating the life of versus
Right.
mourning.
As opposed to freaking out about the death of. I mean, I miss
Yeah.
my dad and I miss my mom both. They were both very, very interesting and cool people, and I miss them, and I miss being able to call them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
On the same token, we have made far more than enough your mom jokes that end up with some kind of death reference with my mom in some way or another, because
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with that. And now my dad's passed on, and I make so many jokes about it. Like, he got cremated, and I kept wanting to put a warning label on the back of the urn that says, "Do not inhale dad. Do not use dad as fertilizer. Do not," like a warning label.
You know,
Because when I dumped my
dad
mom
can
out,
work.
we took
Your
my
dad.
mom to a place that she would have loved, and I dumped out her ashes, and the wind blew her back into my face. And I'm like, I got mom in my mouth. Oh, and I'm like, and everybody was like, and I'm like,
Have you not seen The Big Lebowski?
I mean, it's like, it's like a thing. It's like, I mean, really, honestly, don't think too much on that one, because it is kind of disturbing. But
Yep.
so, my dad and I have, over the last 20 years, I've recounted that story, and we've been making jokes about this, because he was like, when I get cremated, don't end up with me in your mouth, because that's really bad, And that was, a subtle underscore gay joke there too. It was even funnier because that was an ongoing thing. We were
Yeah.
irascible. And so now dad has passed on, and the jokes have flown, but only between my sister and I, because my dad's new wife is actually somewhat horrified by some of these jokes. I feel so bad for her too. I'm like, I'm so sorry. We don't mean to be this way.
It's kind of like I kind of equate this talking. It's kind of like when people sit there and like they're like, so what did you do at your grandmother's wedding or grandmother's funeral? And I was like, well, we went to the funeral. We first started in the church, obviously. Went to the gravesite, did that, and then we went home, turned on a football game, and it was football Sunday.
Right. I mean, it's
And
football
everyone's
Sunday,
like,
man.
you literally did a football game at her wake? Or
Oh
like
man,
the
my
after?
mom would have loved that.
And I was
Didn't
just
think
like,
about
well,
that.
my grandmother was an avid, Patriots fan, and the Patriots game was on. So, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
But
like same
but
thing with my mom. My mom would have been like, go home and watch a Broncos game.
Yeah, like my mom finally found pictures of like this family face. Okay, so when I say it's a family trait face, I'm not joking. It's a family trait face.
Right.
Like, it seems like there's this facial expression that seems to be with my mom and my grandmother's side of the family that like everyone seems to make
Right.
like when they're having fun with people. And so my mom had never gotten this face in picture form by my grandmother when she was my grandmother, at least, or her mother. But before she was before she was my grandmother, like before she had my mom, essentially, there was these pictures that my mom found of her that she sent to my grandfather while he was in Korea.
Korea.
Go back to
Stationed
work.
overseas.
Okay, bye.
Good seeing you.
See you later, Bill.
Bye.
Good to see you. Good to make irascible jokes while you were here.
And so essentially what ended up happening was my mom found these photos and put them online, and they're of my grandmother like making this face of
Right.
like her mouth is like wide open, like
It's a
kind
thing.
of like this.
Uh-huh.
And my family kind of like does this, like this face, like it's the Peter Griffin face.
Right?
It's like and I don't know how else to describe it. Like a lot of people make it, but like
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
some
but it
weird
makes sense.
reason, like when everyone's kid, when we're all kids, it's like it does that, you know. Yeah.
I
Like
get
am
it.
I like but even at like my grandfather's funeral, like memorial service that I went to earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now my grandfather was not originally from Bristol, Rhode Island. He was from a place called Warren, Rhode Island.
Well, that's far away, so I can understand that.
No, Warren Warren and Bristol are rival cities or rival
I'm
towns.
talking about the fact that Rhode Island is like 2 miles wide.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
know.
making a real
I know.
joke that if you're from a
It
different
is
city in Rhode
I
Island, it's
look,
still down the
from
street.
going from top to bottom, you can do it in less than an hour. Okay, come on. Like I know this.
Rhode Island's tiny.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
so the
it's not
joke
too far.
I
It's not
have
too
to make
far.
snarky jokes about Rhode Island because it's
Yeah.
tiny and we get that.
Yeah, it is tiny. But it you know, it's where they filmed Hocus Pocus 2. So
Right.
So basically like this is like essentially piggybacking on like what Brent is seeing here. Right? So my grandfather was from Warren, my grandmother's from Bristol.
Right?
They went to the rival high schools. So my grandfather went to the high school that was a rival school of my grandmother's high school
Okay.
in their respective towns. So when they would actually go to cheer for games, my grandmother had to slowly convert my grandfather to root for Bristol
That's awesome.
because he was now living in Bristol. He was married to a Bristolian. He was, you know, having kids in Bristol.
Right? Oh, that's awesome.
You know, like these are the things, folks. These are the things.
Oh,
So, all right, I think we've gotten to
yeah, that was my warning that we are out. I have been slowly working on Mayrel. And as a side note, because we actually didn't ever manage to do any of our normal Friday check-in, I have completed the character design drawings for Cheng and for Angie. And now I'm working on Mayrel, and that's my big trinity. Those are my 3 main characters. So once they're done, we can move on to secondary characters, which won't require as much effort and work. But I cleared all of my color palettes, and they're all straightened out now, and they all match Copic markers so that I can now do pictures in Copic, because now all of the color codes have their Copic assignments. So everything now matches Copic colors and stuff. So that was always good.
Cool.
So now I'm just finishing up Mayrel. And then once I do, I'll do her little 3-picture thing that I did with the other, or 4-picture that I did with the other 2 characters. And then I'll have a master page, which has all their color codes, all of their devices for their uniforms and everything like that. So that should be finished today, because I've got nothing else really I'm going to do today. So I'm just going to sit over here and do that, except go for a walk with Alex, although it looks like it's trying to snow or threatening to snow. So
no, don't threaten to snow. I just got used to my driveway being clear.
Yeah, it's threatening to snow. And my wife had to take my car up to work today because her car got a nail in the tire. So I'm like, so she's going to be driving my car back in the snow. Maybe she'll fix the tire. So I told her, if you fix the tire, leave my car up there. Just leave my car up there. I'll get it tomorrow. It's fine. It's fine. Because I'm like, drive the car you are most comfortable driving in snow. Don't wreck my really nice car. Yeah, it's snowing in Winter Park, and the snow's coming out I saw it come out over the mountains. I've got a west facing window here so I can see the mountains. And since I have a little park right here, I've got distance to the next houses. That's kind of cool. So those are my things. That's what I did.
I'm in a basement. I can't see anything.
Yep. It's all good. I'm not in a basement because I can't stand it. My office used to be in the basement, and I can't do it. I've got too much of Donna Davis, my mom, in me, and she was just one of those people that opened every window and opened every shade all the time. She couldn't stand the dark. So, yeah, I'm too much of her. I can't do it. So, I'm actually thinking of installing another window right here, just so I'll have 2 windows in here.
Mm.
So that's that. Anyway,
I was
so
thinking
that's
about getting blackout curtains.
yeah. See, some people love that. I can't do it. I cannot do it.
I'm just dark.
It's all good. I don't have any. That's just I know that's a personal trait. It has nothing to do with whether you are a good person or a bad person. You're not a
Well,
good
it's
person
kind
or
of
a
like
bad
I'll sum it up to the type of brand of humor I was exposed to as a child.
I think that's probably accurate.
Yep.
Okay. So I
So-
will see everybody next week. Are you going to do anything, Pepper? I mean, is your battle plan? I know you're not quite back up
I
on your feet.
honestly this week I did not prepare for what was about to happen. So I
You
have a
didn't
lot
know
of
that you
things
were going to
going
lose
on.
Instagram.
Yep,
Nobody knew that.
yeah, no one knew that was gonna happen. But mentally I'm trying to get back on track. I'm gonna take the weekend to do that. And then
Yeah.
Monday I'll try. I need to. What I need to get is I need to get equipment to replace my scanner with an 11x17 scanner. And then I need to also get a few other things for streaming, I guess.
I didn't think about loaning my wife my car means I can't really drive over to Alex's house and go for a walk.
Then Alex has to come to you.
Yeah. Oh, you don't work one Monday. I do.
Yay!
And nobody else works Monday, but I do.
Wait,
I've got
Monday's
stuff
a
to do.
holiday?
Yeah, Monday's a holiday. It's Martin Luther King Day.
Oh, I still have to work.
Yep, you and I, we get to work.
Yeah.
We got work to do.
I talked to my boss.
Can't let
I
grass
talked to my
grow under our
boss.
feet.
Yeah, I talked to my boss. He's not going to give me the day off. He's an asshole.
Brent will be here for us. Brent will be here for us.
Okay.
And Geek Tank. Geek Tank doesn't
No.
get the day off either. Nobody gets the day off.
Woo!
Just us.
I just lowered my seat by accident.
There you go.
All right.
Feel better, my friend. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day
Uh-huh.
sleeping, is what I hope you do. I hope you sleep.
My head's starting to get stopped up again, so I need to blow my nose.
Well, and you're probably also feeling sick. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you later, Brent. I'll see you, Ghost Hand. I don't know if you disappeared on us. I think you disappeared on us somewhere along the line. Donald, if you show up later on, we'll say hi. And all of you other people who are probably here visiting with us too, we'll say bye to you too. Thank you for joining us today on our really weird wandering down all over lane.
Welcome to the wonderful world of Pepper being sick.
It's all good. Pepper, thank you for joining me. Maybe you can join us on Monday for the first hour or something. We'll see. And I will talk to everybody later. And remember to keep your eyes on the stars. Bye-bye. Computer, good night.